Do you think you know the person next to you? Think again. You trust them, you laugh with them, maybe you even love them. But what if the person next to you is not who they pretend to be? What if behind the smiles, the reassuring words, and the carefully crafted mask lurks someone who will betray you the moment it serves them? Evil doesn't always arrive with a knife in hand. It often comes disguised as a friend, a lover, or a trusted companion. The most dangerous people aren't the ones who openly hate you. They're the ones who slowly drain you, manipulate you, and set traps so well that by the time you realize it, it's already too late. They won't stab you in the back right away. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, they will make you doubt yourself, erode your confidence, and turn your kindness into their playground. And when they've taken everything they want, they'll walk away without a second thought, leaving you wondering how you let it happen. But what if you could see it coming? In this we're going to expose 11 red flags that reveal when the person next to you is truly evil. If you notice more than a few of these signs, it's not oya, it's survival instinct. Pay attention, or you may find yourself trapped before you even realize the danger. This is Victory Stoic, the place where we train our minds to see reality, not illusions. If you refuse to be blind to the truth, like, share, subscribe, and comment below. I see through the mask. Have you ever encountered someone like this? Share your experience and let's expose the wolves in sheep's clothing together. Number 1. They don't regret what they did, only that they got caught. Some people make mistakes and feel genuine remorse. Then some don't regret the act, only the inconvenience of getting exposed. If they lie and don't get caught, they feel victorious. If they cheat and no one finds out, they pat themselves on the back. But the moment the truth surfaces, they don't apologize because they feel guilty. They apologize because they have no other choice. At work, this is the colleague who takes credit for your idea, gets caught, and then gives a half-hearted, "Oh, it was a misunderstanding." They aren't sorry for stealing your effort. They're sorry they didn't cover their tracks better. In love, this is the partner who betrays you, and when confronted, doesn't say, "I'm sorry I hurt you," but rather, "How did you find out?" They're more concerned about your detective skills than the pain they've caused. And if they think they can get away with it again, they absolutely will. You've seen these people before. Maybe it was the smooth talker who got caught lying and immediately shifted the blame. Maybe it was the friend who stabbed you in the back and then played the victim when you called them out. They have no remorse, no shame, just excuses. Marcus Aurelius warned against these types of people. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. These individuals have been feeding their corruption for so long that deception isn't a mistake to them, it's a strategy. So how do you protect yourself? Watch their reaction when they are exposed. Do they admit fault and try to change, or do they downplay, shift blame, or act as if you're overreacting? Because if someone only feels bad when they get caught, they are never good to begin with. Red flag alert. If you've seen this pattern before, don't give them another chance to prove they haven't changed, because they won't. Number 2, they always have an excuse. Never accountability. Some people make mistakes and own up to them. Others turn every mistake into a carefully crafted justification. No matter what they do, betrayal, deception, even outright cruelty, they always have a reason why it wasn't their fault. Take Daniel, for example. He was caught cheating on his girlfriend, Lisa. Instead of admitting he was wrong, he twisted the story. "I wouldn't have done it if you had been more affectionate." In his mind, he wasn't unfaithful. Lisa pushed him to it. When Lisa walked away, he didn't reflect on his own choices. He told everyone she was cold and unreasonable, making himself look like the victim. At work, you meet people like Catherine, the manager who throws her employees under the bus when a project fails. If her team succeeds, she takes all the credit. If they fail, suddenly it's because the staff didn't work hard enough, or upper management didn't provide the right support. Never once does she say, "I should have handled this better." Then there's Mark, who constantly lies, but justifies it every time. If he gets caught twisting the truth, he insists, "I was only protecting you." If he manipulates someone, well, if they were smarter, they wouldn't have fallen for it. If he breaks the rules, those rules are stupid anyway. The Stoics warned against people like this. Epictetus said, "A man can't learn what he thinks he already knows." These people don't change because in their minds they have never done anything wrong. So how do you spot them? Listen to how they talk about their past mistakes. Do they take responsibility, or do they always blame circumstances, other people, or fate? If someone always has an excuse for hurting others, betraying trust, or making selfish choices, they will do it again. And when they do, they will find yet another excuse, one that makes it your fault this time. Red flag alert. If someone never takes responsibility for their actions, it's only a matter of time before you become the next person they blame. Walk away before that happens. Number 3, their gain is always someone else's loss, and they couldn't care less. There's a certain type of person in this world who plays life like a game of chess, except there's only one rule: they must always win. And if that means knocking over every other piece on the board, so be it. Take Richard, for example. Richard had a dream job opportunity. The only problem was that so did his closest colleague, Ben. Now, a decent person might say, let the best candidate win. But Richard? No, Richard had a better idea. He spread a little rumor here, twisted a few facts there, and casually implied that Ben had been underperforming in private conversations with their boss. By the time the promotion was announced, Ben was out of the running, Richard was celebrating, and the office was left wondering why Ben suddenly seemed like such a liability. And if you think Richard felt guilty? Of course not. In his mind, he simply played smart. He didn't force Ben to fail, he just helped reality bend in his favor. If Ben was stupid enough to trust him, wasn't that Ben's fault? People like Richard don't lose sleep over what they do to others because in their world, only one person's feelings matter, their own. If they get ahead, if they get richer, if they win, then the pain left in their wake is just collateral damage. The Stoics warned about people like this long ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's worth is measured by what he gives, not what he takes." But the people we're talking about? They measure their worth by how much they can grab before anyone stops them. If you ever wonder whether someone in your life operates this way, ask yourself, in every situation, do they always seem to come out on top, no matter who gets hurt? Do they justify their success by blaming others for their losses? Do they call themselves ambitious when really they're just ruthless? Because make no mistake, if their gain always seems to cost someone else, one day that someone else will be you. Number 4, fake kindness. They help you just to trap you later. There's a special breed of manipulator who doesn't use aggression, threats, or outright cruelty. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, they wrap their poison in honey, disguise their control as generosity, and make sure that every act of kindness comes with an invisible price tag. Take Aunt Linda. Everyone in the family adores her. She's always got a warm smile, a kind word, and a way of making you feel like she's rooting for you. "Oh, sweetheart, you work so hard. You've always been such a fighter," she tells you, gripping your hands tightly, her eyes filled with apparent admiration. At first you believe it. After all, who wouldn't want an aunt who showers them with compliments? But over time, something starts to feel off. One day, at a family gathering, you overhear her talking to another relative. "Oh, my poor son is still looking for a job, but you know, it's not his fault. Even your name struggled for years, and between you and me, well, your name isn't exactly the brightest." You pause. Did she just use your struggles to excuse her son's failures? The same struggles she always praised you for? The same ones she told you were a sign of strength? And then you start noticing it more. The way she's always the first to help out, but somehow it never feels like true generosity. The way her compliments always have a little edge, a little undertone of something else. The way she builds people up just enough to keep them close, but never so much that they stop feeling like they owe her something. Because that's the trick, isn't it? She doesn't want you to feel empowered, she wants you to feel indebted. People like Aunt Linda don't give up because they're good-hearted. They give because it buys them control. They help you today so they can remind you of it tomorrow. They praise you just enough so they can take credit for your success later. The Stoics understood this kind of manipulation well. Seneca once wrote, "A gift given with expectation is not a gift, it is a contract." True kindness expects nothing in return, but these people, they always collect. So how do you protect yourself? Look at what happens after someone helps you. Do they bring it up later? Do they subtly use it as leverage? Do they twist their generosity into a reason why you should tolerate their backhanded insults, their subtle digs, their quiet humiliations? Because if their kindness is just another way to control you, then you are not their friend, their family, or their loved one. You are their investment. And one day, they will come to collect. Number 5. Shameless. They can do the most disgusting things and feel no remorse. Some people make mistakes and feel guilty. Others commit outright atrocities and wear them like a badge of honor. They don't just lack shame, they cannot feel it at all. Take Samantha, my cousin. A beautiful woman, always well-dressed, always charming. But beneath the polished exterior was a mind so twisted that even betrayal wasn't enough. She needed to be admired for it. For months, she had been having an affair with David, a married man with 2 children. She knew exactly what she was doing. His wife, Julia, a lovely woman who had given David 20 years of loyalty, who had built a life with him, who had sacrificed her dreams to raise their children. But none of that mattered to Samantha, because the day David finally left Julia, abandoning her and their kids with nothing but heartbreak, Samantha didn't hide. She didn't feel guilty. She didn't even try to downplay what she had done. She celebrated. She strutted into family gatherings with David on her arm, a smug smile on her lips. She laughed about how pathetic Julia was for begging him to stay, for crying in front of their kids. Well, she said, sipping her champagne, it just proves I was always the better woman. If he loved her so much, why did he choose me? She wasn't ashamed of the destruction she caused. She was proud of it. And when people whispered, when they dared to question her, she just shrugged. If someone pointed out the pain she inflicted, she would roll her eyes, playing the victim. People are just jealous of what I have, she would say. It's not my fault I'm irresistible. The Stoics had a name for people like this, those who had lost all sense of honor, who twisted reality to serve their ego. Epictetus warned, a person who feels no shame is dangerous. They will do anything and believe they are right. So how do you recognize these people before they leave a trail of devastation? Watch how they talk about their sins. Do they acknowledge wrongdoing, or do they twist the narrative until they become the hero? Do they feel guilt, or do they brag about their ability to get what they want, no matter who suffers? Because if someone can betray, destroy, and humiliate others and still sleep soundly at night, then they are not just selfish. They are something much worse. And if they haven't hurt you yet, it's only because they haven't had a reason to, yet. Number 6. They take pleasure in other people's pain. Some people hurt others by accident. Some hurt others out of selfishness. And then some hurt people on purpose, because they enjoy it. Take Vanessa. Beautiful, confident, magnetic. The kind of woman who could make a man feel like the center of the universe, only to shatter him into 1,000 pieces just for fun. For 2 years, Ethan was her puppet. She reeled him in with sweet words, with moments of tenderness so intoxicating that he believed she was his soulmate. And just when he was convinced she loved him, she would rip it away. "You're too needy," she'd say with a smirk when he asked why she had been distant for days. "I don't think I love you anymore," she whispered one evening, watching his face collapse. He would cry, he would beg, he would crumble under the weight of her rejection, and she would watch. Not with sadness, not with guilt, with satisfaction. Because Vanessa didn't just hurt Ethan. She needed to see him hurt. But the worst part? She never let him go completely. Whenever Ethan was on the verge of healing, whenever he started to move on, she would pull him back. "I miss you," she'd say, tears in her eyes, just convincing enough for him to believe it. And just like that, he was back in her arms, desperate to make things work. But the moment she saw that glimmer of hope in his eyes, the moment she knew he thought they were finally okay, she crushed him again. "You're so stupid for believing I ever loved you." People like Vanessa don't break hearts because they are confused or damaged. They do it because it gives them a rush. They don't just want control, they want suffering. The Stoics warned about these types of people. Seneca wrote, "A man who delights in another's misery is not just cruel, he is diseased." To enjoy the pain of another is not just a flaw, it is a sickness of the soul. So how do you know if someone in your life thrives on your suffering? Pay attention to how they react when you're in pain. Do they comfort you, or do they smirk? Do they lift you, or do they remind you how weak you are? Do they break you down, only to save you so they can break you again? Because if someone keeps ripping you apart and sewing you back together just to watch you bleed, they don't love you. They love your suffering, and the only way to win against them is to stop giving them the pleasure of watching you break. Number 7. You're not a person to them, you're a tool to be used. Some friendships are built on loyalty, some are built on shared experiences, and then some are built on pure convenience, where you are nothing more than a resource, a means to an end, a tool to be used and discarded the moment you're no longer useful. Take Jake. On the surface, he was the perfect roommate. Charming, easygoing, always ready with a joke. When he and Daniel moved into a shared apartment, everything seemed great at first. Jake loved the idea of living in a nice place, splitting the rent, and having someone around. But there was one problem. Jake was lazy. Cleaning? Not his job. Bills? He always forgot to send his half. Taking responsibility for anything? Absolutely out of the question. But as long as it was just the two of them, he didn't care if the apartment was a mess, if the dishes piled up, or if Daniel had to come home after a night shift to find chaos waiting for him. But the moment someone else came over, a friend, a date, a guest of any kind, suddenly Jake cared. And not only did he care, but he made sure to shift the blame. Yeah, sorry about the mess. Daniel's just not great at keeping things clean. The same Daniel who had worked a 12-hour shift the night before. The same Daniel had cleaned up after Jake more times than he could count. But in Jake's mind, reality didn't matter, only perception did. As long as he came out looking good, throwing his so-called friend under the bus was no big deal. Because that's the thing about people like Jake, they don't see relationships as mutual. They see them as transactions. The apartment, it wasn't a shared space, it was a convenience. The friendship, it wasn't built on trust, it was built on utility. And the moment Daniel pushed back, the moment he stopped picking up the slack, Jake was done with him. These people don't fight to keep relationships because, in their minds, you were never a person to begin with. You were just a tool, one that worked well for a while, but now you're disposable. The Stoics had a term for people like this: users, takers, those who extract everything they can from others without giving anything in return. Epictetus said, "He who seeks only to gain from others will one day find himself alone." But here's the problem. People like Jake never think that far ahead. They don't believe in loyalty because they don't understand its value. They only care about what benefits them at the moment. So how do you spot them? Pay attention to what happens when you stop being useful. Do they stick around, or do they slowly pull away? Do they value you as a person, or only as someone who makes their life easier? Because if someone only wants you when you're convenient for them, they were never really your friend to begin with. Number 8. Winning at any cost, even if it means destroying you. For most people, arguments are about resolving a disagreement. For some, they're about understanding, finding a middle ground, or at the very least, standing up for one's beliefs. But for a certain kind of person, arguments are never about what's right or wrong. They are about one thing and one thing only: winning. And when winning is all that matters, nothing is off limits. Take Michael. Married for 6 years, seemingly a devoted husband, always charming in public. But behind closed doors, every disagreement was a battlefield, and he would do whatever it took to emerge victorious. One night, he and his wife Sarah had a small argument. Nothing serious, just a discussion about how to handle their finances. Sarah calmly expressed her thoughts. She believed they should be more careful with spending, and maybe cut back on unnecessary luxuries. Michael, of course, disagreed. But instead of debating the issue like a normal person, instead of acknowledging Sarah's perspective, he did something far more calculated. He didn't attack her logic. He attacked her identity. You know, this is exactly why you'll never understand money. It's in your blood. Your mother was just a lowly farmer after all. What could she have taught you except how to think small? Sarah's mother had passed away years ago. She had been a hard-working woman, raising Sarah with nothing but love and sacrifice. And now her memory was being dragged through the dirt, not because Michael believed what he was saying, but because he needed to win. Sarah sat there, stunned, humiliated, betrayed. Michael had just spit on the memory of the woman who raised her. But the worst part? He felt nothing. Because for Michael, this wasn't personal. It was strategy. And sure enough, 2 days later, it was as if nothing had happened. He came home with flowers, smiling, laughing, joking like he hadn't just gutted his wife's heart a few nights before. When Sarah confronted him, when she told him how deeply his words had hurt her, he simply shrugged. "Oh, come on. Are you still upset about that? I was just frustrated. You take things too seriously." No apology, no remorse. Because in his mind, he had done nothing wrong. He had won the argument. And that, for him, was all that mattered. The Stoics had a word for people like this: tyrants of the everyday. They may not rule nations, but they rule through fear, through control, through calculated cruelty. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." But to people like Michael, revenge, domination, and total submission are the only outcomes they care about. So how do you recognize them? Watch how they argue. Do they care about logic, fairness, or truth? Or do they care only about tearing the other person down? Do they use manipulation, cruelty, and even the memory of the dead to ensure they walk away victorious? Because if someone treats every conflict like a war, if they are willing to burn relationships to the ground just to stand on top of the ashes, then one day, that battlefield will be your life. Number 9. They hate seeing others happy, so they find a way to ruin it. For most people, a friend's success, happiness, or big life event is something to celebrate. But for certain people, someone else's joy feels like a personal attack. They don't just fail to be happy for others, they actively try to sabotage them. Take Rachel. She had been friends with Olivia for years, and when Olivia got engaged, Rachel played the part of the supportive best friend. She smiled, hugged her, and acted excitedly. She even offered to be her maid of honor. But as the wedding approached, Rachel's mask started to slip. At first, it was subtle. She criticized Olivia's dress, calling it a little too simple. She rolled her eyes at the flower arrangements, insisting they looked cheap. When Olivia was glowing with happiness, Rachel would laugh and say, "You do realize marriage isn't that great, right? Give it a few years." But then came the wedding day. And that's when Rachel showed her true colors. As Olivia stood in front of the mirror, looking breathtaking in her wedding gown, Rachel stood behind her with a forced smile, gripping her bouquet just a little too tightly. Then she leaned in and whispered, "You know, Mark had a thing for me before he met you." A lie. A meaningless, cruel lie. But Olivia's heart sank, because that's what Rachel wanted. She wanted to plant a seed of doubt, to dull the happiness Olivia felt, to make sure that, on the biggest day of her life, she wouldn't be truly at peace. And she didn't stop there. During the reception, she made sly little comments, implying that Olivia wasn't wife material. She danced a little too closely to the groom and laughed a little too loudly at his jokes, just enough to get into Olivia's head. She wasn't ruining the wedding outright. No, that would be too obvious. But she was poisoning it, piece by piece. Because for Rachel, Olivia's happiness felt like a knife to the chest. Some people cannot stand to see others shine. They need to dim the light, to drag others into the shadows with them. The Stoics warned about these types of people, those who resent joy, who view another's success as their failure. Epictetus once said, "He who envies others condemns himself." So how do you spot them? Watch how they react to good news. Do they celebrate with you, or do they downplay it? Do they find ways to twist it, insert doubt, and make you second-guess your joy? Because if someone cannot be happy for you, if your success makes them restless, then one day they will find a way to take that happiness away. Number 10. If they can't have it, they'll destroy it. Most people, when they lose something they want, move on. They accept reality, deal with disappointment, and find another path. But then some can't stand the idea of someone else winning. If they can't have it, no one can, and they will burn everything to the ground just to make sure of it. Take Liam. At his company, he had been gunning for a promotion, one that would put him in charge, give him influence, and finally let him prove his worth. But there was a problem. His colleague, Daniel, was also up for the position. And worse, Daniel was the stronger candidate, When Liam realized he was losing, he didn't try to improve himself, didn't work harder, didn't accept defeat with dignity. No, he took another route. He made sure that if he couldn't get the job, neither could Daniel. He started spreading subtle rumors. Daniel's been acting a little off lately, don't you think? He accidentally let it slip that Daniel had been considering leaving the company. A lie, but told convincingly. He planted doubts, stirred up tension, and manipulated conversations until management no longer trusted Daniel enough to promote him. In the end, neither of them got the job. The company hired someone from the outside. But Liam didn't care. Because in his mind, as long as Daniel didn't win, he still counted it as a victory. And this kind of person? They don't just appear in the workplace. Think of Emily, the woman who spent months chasing a man, only to find out he had fallen for someone else. Did she let him go, wish him well? Of course not. She started whispering to his new girlfriend. You know, he used to text me all the time while you two were talking. A lie. A calculated, vicious lie. But she didn't want him. She just couldn't stand the idea of someone else having him. This is the essence of destructive envy. These people don't want to succeed. They want to ensure that no one else does. They are driven not by ambition but by the need to control. And when they lose control, they choose destruction over defeat. The Stoics warned about these individuals. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." But these people don't believe in revenge. They believe in annihilation. So how do you spot them? Look at what they do when they start losing. Do they bow out gracefully, or do they start twisting the knife? Do they sabotage, manipulate, and poison the well just to make sure no one else can drink from it? Because if someone is willing to destroy something just because they can't have it, then one day they will do the same to you. Number 11. They use fear to keep you under their control. Most people seek love, trust, or respect to maintain relationships. But then some don't need to be loved, don't care to be trusted, and don't even bother earning respect. They control people in the simplest, most brutal way possible, by making them afraid. Take Josh, a man who had spent years making the worst possible choices, gambling away his family's money, drinking until he was numb, racking up debt faster than he could ever hope to repay. But instead of taking responsibility, instead of fixing his life, he found an easier way to get what he wanted: fear. When his parents finally had enough, when they refused to cover his gambling debts for the 5th time, he didn't apologize, didn't try to change. No, he threatened them. "If you don't help me, you'll never see me again. I swear, I'll do something drastic." His mother, already exhausted from years of stress, broke down in tears. His father, torn between anger and fear, reached for his wallet. And Josh? Josh knew exactly what he was doing. Because this wasn't the first time. Every time he needed money, he played the same card. Every time they tried to cut him off, he reminded them he was capable of hurting himself. Not because he wanted to die. No, because he knew they couldn't live with the guilt. And so they paid. Again and again and again. Because that's how people like Josh operate. They don't ask for help, they demand it. They don't seek sympathy, they manipulate it. They don't suffer consequences, they make sure others suffer in their place. The Stoics warned against being ruled by fear because fear makes you a slave. Epictetus wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." But people like Josh, they don't want you to be free. Because as long as you're afraid, as long as they can make you feel responsible for their pain, you will never say no. So how do you protect yourself? Recognize the pattern. Do they use emotional blackmail every time they want something? Do they make you feel like their survival, their happiness, their entire existence depends on you? Do they punish you with guilt, threats, and self-destruction whenever you try to break free? Because if someone uses fear to control you, if they make you responsible for their failures, then you are not their loved one. You are their hostage. And the only way to escape is to stop playing the game. Closing, the ugly truth. Some people are more than just toxic. They are dangerous. Not everyone in this world is evil, but if someone checks multiple boxes on this list, they are not just a difficult person, they are a walking threat. They manipulate, deceive, destroy, and take without remorse. And if you let them in, they will poison your life, piece by piece. The worst part, they rarely look like villains. They might smile, pretend to care, and offer kindness when it benefits them. But underneath it all, they are only waiting for the right moment to exploit, betray, or control you. So ask yourself, have you ever encountered someone like this? Have you ever felt the slow erosion of your confidence, the constant confusion, the guilt that was never yours to carry? If so, share your story, not just for yourself, but for others, so we can all learn to recognize the warning signs before it's too late. This is Victory Stoic, the place where you learn to see through the masks, build resilience, and protect your mind. If you refuse to be anyone's victim, like, share, subscribe, and comment below. I choose to protect myself. Because in a world full of deception, clarity is power. And the sooner you see the truth, the sooner you can break free.